Okay, so let's just do a quick introduction. I'm Andrew Mason. I run this thing called the London Photoshow, which I think some of you here have either taken part in or have visited, or maybe you didn't know about it. So that's a big exhibition we do every year on the South Bank at the Barge House Gallery. And one of the things that is obviously very important there is the prints that go on the walls. So thank you all for joining and spending an hour of your time with us. So I'll let Nancy introduce herself separately, but she came to the London Photo Show last year as a visitor, and one of the things she said to me was that she felt that people could be, making more out of their prints that are on the wall, maximizing the value of any sales that they make. So we kind of, I don't know how we actually quite came up with the idea, but we thought it would be nice to do a bit of a talk where Nancy talks about how you can maximize the value of your print sales, which is basically what this talk is about. So I think that quite nicely is segue. I should be a radio DJ. That nice segues onto Nancy. So I'll hand you over to Nancy now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. So just as Andrew said, he very kindly invited me to the show last year. And I had a wander around and saw some fantastic work. But the thought that I left with was I wonder whether there are some few tips and tricks that people could benefit from, sort of sharing best practice in order to maximize the value of the print that you've put on the walls, because obviously it's a lot of time and effort to do what people do in terms of exhibiting, and there's a cost involved as well. So I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but just some ideas about things you might be able to do. At the end, I'm going to point you in various directions to get more resources that you can then look at your own leisure. And hopefully there'll be some value in the next 30 to 50 minutes, depending on how long we take and how many questions there are. So in terms of who am I, I've been in the sort of print and photographic industry for over 30 years. I started at Kodak in 1988. I went to Indigo, which is one of the first digital printing companies. Indigo was acquired by Hewlett Packard, and I joined Hahnemühle 2 years ago. So my background is more in the printing than it is in the actual photography element, although I have touched on that a few times throughout those 30 years. My jobs have been a variety of things. So they've been sales and marketing, but a lot of business development, and hence my interest in helping people maximize the efforts that they put into various things. And today, what we're going to do is just go through three main things, a little bit about Hahnemühle, but then the three areas are about helping you define your value proposition, establishing your brand, and then marketing your work. So that's really what we're going to have a look at. So if we start with last year, this was one of the displays that I saw, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. So Anna Lohman, gorgeous pictures, very, very vibrant, amazing images, and fabulous titles that go with them. Things like, Life Sucks instead of Life Sucks, which I thought was brilliant. She framed them all. She framed them all in the same frame, which is, good and bad. So if you like the frame, that's great. If you don't like the frame, if people can't visualize it in another way, that's quite tricky. But also there's quite a cost to framing. So a lot of people that go to exhibitions actually have them mounted and don't frame them. So there's a eco signage mounting board that you can use that I'll show you the resource to at the end. So you don't always have to frame the print. And if you do frame, you can see here that there's quite a lot of light reflection on the prints. And so the choice of glass that you have, if you do frame, you can get anti-reflective glass. So there's a lot of things to consider. On the left-hand side, you can see that Anna's put a little bit about herself. There's a couple of social media tags, and then there's the QR code. It's an A4 piece of white paper on the wall. Another couple of images that really struck me. with these two. Again, gorgeous images. Christina Jansen talks about herself in the bit on the right-hand side, very similar to the other piece of information. But again, it's largely about herself, not about the images or any sort of context of the images. And then down the bottom, you've got the price of those two images, and it's quite clear, but it's also very factual. It's a very factual piece of information on this piece of paper. And it's part of the sales pitch, really, to help to try and develop an emotional connection with whoever you're buying from. And therefore, people generally want to see a little bit more about you as an individual, not just the facts, but also some of the things that are important to you. And that, leads us on to the topics about brand and value proposition and this type of thing. How do you differentiate yourself to others, and what do you want people to take away from that? So those of you that are familiar with Hahnemühle, we're a 440-year-old mill based in Germany. And with regard to printing in this context, we do other types of papers, but in this context, we do digital fine art media and we do classic photo media. And the reason why that distinction is important is the digital fine art media has archival properties. It lasts for over 100 years. With the photo papers will last for up to 50 years. So a lot of people, when they've written about the paper, sometimes they wrote photo luster. So for those that know paper, they know that this is not a print that's going to last for a long time. So if they're going to spend, as in Christina's images, £550 on an A2 framed print, and they've done it on photo paper, it's not something that you're going to hand down to generations. And I think these are subtle things that are really important when you're positioning your work. The other thing that's very important is digital fine art media is cotton. The main part is cotton. We also have cotton mixed with bamboo, hemp, agave, sugarcane. So there's a natural fiber sustainability angle to some of those digital fine art papers. If environment is important to you, then that's an important point. On the photo papers, every single company that sells photo paper, their photo paper has plastic in it. It cannot be recycled. So again, if the environment is important to you, if you're printing photos on photo luster and you're just sticking them up and they're for the exhibition and then they're going to, be binned, they will be binned and they'll go to landfill. They won't be recycled. The sustainable photo satin you can see on this slide here is the only photo paper that is fully recyclable. It has no plastic in it. So again, just some subtle points about the paper itself and the story that underpins what's important to you, if that is what's important to you. So that leads us on to helping define your value proposition. What are you about as a creative, as a photographer, as an artist? Now, again, I'm not going to show you a lot of Hahnemühle slides, but the ones I'm showing you to make a point. So what's important to Hahnemühle, our value proposition, there's two main things. One is our heritage. So wherever we go, we talk about the fact we've been around for 440 years. We talk about the landmarks over that period of time. We talk about the fact that Picasso, Dali, they've used our papers. We talk about the fact they're vegan coated. And we also talk about the fact that NASA bought some of our paper into space. So we try and make this link from craftsmen into the digital age and innovation of what we do. So that's part of our value proposition. We've been around a long time, got great heritage, but we also innovate. So that's what we try and portray. The other really important thing is our environmental credentials, the sustainability. So I mentioned earlier the natural line, the sustainable photo satin. So this is why we've invested in bamboo, hemp, agave, all these different types of papers, because obviously there's a lot of press around paper and printing, and so we also always want to be on the right side of that conversation. So that's what we do. But what can you do? So you're not a company necessarily, you're an individual. So it's really important for you to think about, well, what are you about? How are you going to build your relationship with your audience? What is it that interested you in photography? You know, was it the fact that you were given a camera at a very early age? Did you have a relative that liked photography? Did you see something shocking or inspiring or something? What was it that triggered you to go in to photography? People are interested in the story behind the pictures. They're interested in you. So think about what it is about you and try and make sure some of that comes out in your print when you talk about yourself. Why are you doing photo fairs? Are you there to build a brand? Are you there to sell the prints? Are you there to win awards? Are you there because you just wanted to be there? The reason why you're there will have a big impact on actually how you show up. If you are there to sell prints, then obviously having the price of the prints, having a way to buy the prints is really important. A lot of the photos that I saw and the work that was shown had no sales prices on, no, they might have been through the QR code, but you are relying on somebody making that effort to do that. So if you want to sell the work, you need to explain how much it is and how to buy it. Some people didn't do that. What's important to you? So when you do some of the projects that you do, what is your sort of belief system? What are you advocating? You know, do you support rainforests? Are you concerned about child poverty? Is it education? So again, it's trying to build the story behind the pictures that then connect to you. Because very often people, well, not very often, people always buy from people. So knowing something about you, so in sales, having that relationship is really important. You can't speak to everybody you're going to sell a photo to, but a few words on that piece of paper on the left-hand side of your displays needs to actually convey some of that very succinctly. And in terms of what you want people to remember about you, make it really simple. You know, so almost try and have a tagline in that piece of paper that describes you so that people can say, oh, I remember that was the person that really was, you know, found this important or did this or whatever. So make it really memorable. And whatever you display, remember it reinforces your personal brand and how you display it. So that the paper that you choose, the framing that you choose, the lighting, everything is all about your brand. So establishing your brand. Again, I'm showing this to prove a point. So we focus on heritage for the value proposition, eco credentials. Great, they're words, but what do we actually do to back that up? So obviously we have a lot of we enter a lot of awards for what we have, our papers. We support a lot of good causes, environmental and others. We have certified studios, so we have companies around the world, studios around the world, that we go in and audit, so that if photographers like yourselves want somebody to print your work, you can look on the Hahnemühle app and see if they're a certified studio, so you've got some degree of confidence of quality. And we associate ourselves also with helping the young people develop in various ways. One of those ways is we collaborate with Photo London for the Hahnemühle Student Award. So this award, the organisation goes to universities, the tutors put their students forward that they believe are the top students. This year we had 100 apply, and that then was whittled down by an independent panel of judges, and 5 of them had their work displayed at Photo London. And then we announced the winner that the judges chose. The winner will then go to the factory in Germany and learn how paper is made. So these all back up our brand in terms of what we stand for. And I know it's difficult as an individual, but everything that you do establishes you as a brand. So what are those things? What could they possibly include? So in terms of the prints, are they limited editions or not? Are they digital fine art? You know, are you selling them at the top end of things because they're archival? Or are they going to be printed as posters? Are they going to be photo prints? So 3 very different positionings for your images: digital fine art, high-end, high-value paper, archival, probably very expensive glass and framing, photo, maybe more in the middle, poster editions, perhaps less expensive, but more of them, certainly not limited editions, maybe done on different printing devices. So how are you developing your imagery and how are you taking it to market? Are you going to sign it or not sign it? Some people do, some people don't. Obviously, if you sign it and you become famous over time, then they become far more valuable. The paper type: archival, photo, texture, eco-credentials. There's a lot to think about when you're actually looking at what type of paper to use. When we go to trade shows, one of the things that we do is we print the same image on a variety of different papers, and we display them on the stand. And we encourage people to go up and touch them, actually touch the papers with the print, to see how the paper actually affects the look and feel of the image. And then that comes to framing, because some people, it's quite popular now, not to frame the image, but to actually have it in a floating frame with no glass. If you've got paper that has certain haptics, then that is an interesting thing to do because you can see it more clearly. If you're doing, we had a photographer recently that was doing a project on waterways and the cleanliness of waterways. He chose to print on the hemp paper because the environmental subject matter lent itself to an environmental paper. We've had people shoot imagery of, you know, tigers and leopards, and so a more coarse paper actually shows the fur of the animals in a very different way to a gloss or a luster would. So choosing paper is an interesting thing to do. Where are you going to print? Are you going to print it yourself? Are you going to have a certified studio print it? If you have a certified studio print it, that's another thing to add to the information about the print, printed at, you know, whoever it might be, because it then elevates the print to another level in terms of professional printing. What type of print is it going to be? So if it's on an Epson or a Canon, something like that, it's going to be archival pigment inkjet ink, which will also last a long time. Is it going to be C-type? C-type is a more traditional way of printing. Is it going to be lithographic? Lithographic tends to be for long runs. So if you were printing a number of posters, lithographic would be the cheapest way you could do it, but they're not going to last over 100 years. So you have to then make sure that everything that you're doing stacks up with the final sales price of the print, because all those things are important. frame or no frame, I talked about sometimes people don't put them behind glass because they want to see the paper. But if you do put them behind glass, there's 4 or 5 different types of glass. There's reflective, non-reflective, there's museum grade glass, there's all sorts of different types of glass. If you go down the route of framing and you have glass, then choose a glass that suits the price of the sale. And if it's an expensive piece of work that you're putting together, then say what sort of glass it is, because it's important. The glass, the ink, the closeness to sunlight, the paper, all those things will have an effect on how long the print lasts. When I say print lasts, I mean in terms of going yellow or fading, this type of thing. So again, it's all part of what am I doing this for? How long do I want these prints to last? Am I actually trying to set things up to be very archival, or are these a different type of print and photo? And if it's photo, do I want to go sustainable photo so that it can be recycled at some stage? Context explanation of the photo and the saved file size. So I read some lovely explanations about why the photo was taken and how it was taken, and that's really important because it draws you into the story. But one of the other things that we became aware of when we have been doing the Student Award is actually understanding the importance of saving the file, the image, at the right file size. So if you save the file, the image, at too small a resolution, you can never blow it up. So if it's not saved at a large enough resolution, you will be constrained by how big the print can be, because it will go out of focus essentially if you try and make it too big when you print it. So I can't stress that enough. File preparation and saving the image at the right size, ready for print, is really important. You can always print small with a high file resolution, but you can never blow it up if the file size is not big enough to begin with. If it's for sale, at what price? And then can they order online? So a lot of people might go to an exhibition and say, well, I really like that, but I'm down in London for a few days. I don't want to travel around with it. Can I order it online? And if I order it online, do I have to have the frame? Can I just order the image and then I get it framed how I want it? Oh, and can I choose the paper potentially that it's printed on? All those things, of course, are entirely possible if you set them up to be able to be offered in that way. Certificates of authenticity. A lot of high-end photographers will issue certificates of authenticity. There's a whole variety of different companies that provide them. We provide them, others provide them too. But this is a way of establishing the provenance of the work. So with our certificates of authenticity, you have a certificate that is watermarked. You have labels that are security labels that cannot be tampered with. They've got unique numbers on. One goes on the back of the print, one goes on the certificate, and then you write some details on the certificate. Once you've done that, you can then log all of that information on one of our solutions called My Art Registry. And again, this level of security you can build into the value of the work that you're selling. If it has it, then by default, people then believe there's more value in the work than if you don't have it. So if you start to stack up all these things, is it limited edition? Is it not? Is it signed? Is it not? What type of paper does it have? Where was it printed? How was it printed? Is it framed? Is it museum glass? all these things help you actually determine the price point at which your work might fit. And you might choose to mix and match these. So this is an example from Photo London of an artist, a photographer that I think, has done an extremely good job at presenting their work and telling the story in a really clear way. So the artist, Mahida, is from Ethiopia. She was displaying these 8 pieces of work. Next to these 8 pieces of work, she had a fairly detailed set of information. I'm not going to read all the detail on the left-hand side, but she's got a nice title for the set of prints. She's got a description of her background in terms of self-taught photographer. She talks about the fact that she grew, she's Ethiopian, and she talks a little bit about the cultural DNA and a little bit about the culture, if you like, of how people view things. And she then talks about the process that she went through for these photographs, where she got the inspiration, where she got some of the content, and how she then came to publish them. So this level of text, the words, I think, are very carefully chosen, and they do build a depth of relationship without ever meeting, the photographer. So every word here, I think she's thought about before it's been put onto this piece of paper. On the right-hand side, you've sort of got the more nitty-gritty details. So you've got the title, you've got the year it was done, you've got her name, and then you've got the paper, you've got the size. It's an edition of 7. She names each one of the images in each row. She's got the price down the bottom. And then if you want it framed, she's got the prices as well. Coop is the gallery down in Brighton. So should you need more information or want to view them in situ, perhaps you would visit them or phone them. You can choose the frames. I just think she's done a very nice job of combining some emotional information, but also some factual information, so you know exactly what it is you're getting. She doesn't go as far as mentioning the glass, the museum or not grade glass, but I think it's a very nice best in class sort of example. At Photo London, Martin Parr was very kind and he lent us one of his images. Part of his branding is that he always uses this border and white frame combination. So again, it's a little bit like the National Geographic. When you see an image with the yellow around the outside and you immediately think that's the National Geographic, is a little bit like a Martin Parr. He has a very stylistic brand and a very set frame that he uses. On the left-hand side, you can see the Certificate of Authenticity. That's one of ours. The image of the picture, the information of the picture. It's a pigment print. It's got the hologram sticker down the bottom on the right. The other sticker will be on the back of the paper that the image is printed on. And it's got the type of paper, signed by Martin and dated. So again, those two in tandem work to create a lot of value for that image. My Art Registry was something I mentioned earlier on about where you can go online and upload the image and the certificate number to keep a record. Some people have an Excel sheet on their laptop and that's how they manage their limited editions, which is fine until something goes wrong. To have it in the cloud is a lot more, is a lot safer. So this is one way that you can do that. And then finally, the topic of marketing your work. So you need to create a website and the website needs to display you and your brand in the way that you want to be displayed. So it's very important how that looks. I'm going to show you one in a few minutes, just to give you an idea. Do social media. So, talk about yourself, talk about projects you're doing, talk about why you're doing them, what inspired you to do them. Just keep building your profile in the industry. That's really important. Collaborate with industry players. So if there are people out there that you can work with, be associated with, it'll help raise your profile. Exhibit, that's a great way to get known. Enter awards, but think very carefully about how you do that. All those elements that we talked about earlier, because it is expensive, it's time consuming. So make sure if you're going to go, do it well. It's better to do less and do it well than do a lot of things and not do such a good job. Look for that lucky break. So always talk to people, meet people. Things come from the strangest of conversations that actually can lead to quite extraordinary things. So make sure you're open to those lucky breaks. And then believe in yourself. If you do this, you are going to be creative. You are going to be interested in what you do. And I'm sure other people will be interested in that as well. So these are some resources that might be of interest to you. So the Hahnemühle app, you can download it from the App Store. This is very useful to get information about certified studios, where they are, what they do. It's very useful to get ICC profiles. So if you're printing yourself and you're experimenting with different papers, you can download the ICC profiles and then print on your Canon or Epson or whatever printer you might have. There's also help on there in terms of product information, technical information. It's a very useful app to have. YouTube. So Keith Cooper does some great videos about photography, about printing photography. So he's somebody that you might want to follow for some interesting insights. One of our biggest certified studios is a company called PrintSpace. They do an awful lot of a wide variety of work, and they've actually created 2 books. One is called How to Sell Art Online. The other one is How to Show Your Work. But if you go on their website, they also have a lot of that information on their website, which was very useful for you to look at. This is the website I was going to show you. So Dennis O'Regan is a photographer to the stars, if you like, to a lot of bands. So David Bowie and Queen and that type of rock era. So I've just clicked through to his website. And again, when we talk about the brand that you want to portray, this is a very rock star type look and feel to a website. It's very engaging because the images are changing. They're very vibrant images. They really draw you in. Across the top, you can see the different links that you can go to. So you can scroll from looking at fine art print productions to the books that he's written. The viewing room, you can contact him. So these sort of iconic websites of major photographers are really worth looking at. From a practical point of view, if you go through to the fine art prints and limited editions, if you, I don't know, click on this one, Queen. So you can see the images of Queen here. And if we click on Freddie Mercury in Paris, again, he's got the title, he's got a bit about the information, he's got the paper that he's used, he's got certificates of authenticity, he's got different print sizes, unframed, limited edition of 25, £2,000 for a 20 by 24, and then they just go up in value depending on the size that you have. And interestingly, he only sells them unframed, because framing tends to be such a personal choice. Obviously, he's a very successful photographer. He has his own gallery in Hammersmith, so you can also go in and meet him and view the images if you want to. But the website is actually self-contained. It's self-sufficient. It has everything on it that you would need to know, and it's in a branding that suits the individual himself. Okay, that was all I was going to share with you. But I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. If I can't, then I'll get back to you. But as I said at the beginning, the idea was to not necessarily give you all the answers, but to just give you some things to think about that might help you when you're looking at getting more value from the prints that you produce. So hopefully you found that useful.
That was great. Thank you, Nancy. That was really useful. I learned a lot, that's for sure. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, I think that's okay, isn't it? So you might just have to unmute yourself and then ask a question. So if anyone's got any questions, just go for it, basically. Maybe you're too shy. Or you can ask it in the chat if you'd rather put it in the chat and I'll read it out. No? Okay. Good. Okay, so
I'm very happy to take questions via email if anyone thinks of something after the event.
Okay, so are you happy for me to send everyone your email, Nancy?
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, great. Thanks. That's very kind. So I'll circulate tomorrow a recording and also Nancy's email to everyone that came. And yeah, that's it. I hope you found that useful and that you all have success in your print sales from here on in. Cool. Okay, hold on. Ivan, you have a question? You have to unmute. Hold on. Let me. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I am a fine art landscape photographer in Canada, and I have been exhibiting in art galleries for more than 10 years, and I would say 95% of what you presented. And yeah, I have been a very successful seller of my photographs. One of the questions I have is about the number of editions, because I have limited myself to 30. I see a lot of photographers offering 500, 1,000 limited editions, which is a nonsense from my point of view. But I use 30 because I know it is the case in France because I sell worldwide. It is probably the case in other countries too, but if one photo is printed more than 30 times, it is not considered a piece of art, and it cannot be deduced from your, it cannot be included into your expenses for income taxes purposes. So I don't know if you are aware of such a law in other countries. I think they have the same in Spain, but I don't know about other countries in Europe.
I'm not aware of it being a law, but certainly 25 to 30 tends to be the number that, rings true for the very high end. And that's why I think it is important to know where you're aiming the work at. If it's high end, then really put the effort in to make it worth that amount of money. And then the middle, might not be limited and might not be signed, and that might be on a different type of paper. And then, if you're doing posters, then that's an entirely different proposition. But no, from a legal point of view, I think I couldn't tell you.
Okay. With regards to the papers made by your company, I have seen no indication about the use or the non-use of optical brightening agents, OBA. So what is it?
If you go on our website and click on the specific papers,
Yeah.
It will reference whether there is any OBA brighteners or not, but typically we don't.
Okay.
But again, there's a difference between photo paper and digital fine art.
Yeah, sure, I know, yeah. One other question is, well, you talked about having a tagline for each photo, but you didn't mention having a title. So do you see a difference between the two, or do you prefer the title? Or
definitely a title. Definitely a title. The tagline was more a tagline for you as a person that people would remember, so that when they see your work and then they talk about you afterwards, they say, oh, it was the person that was really into this. So what is it you want when people walk away? What is it the one thing that you want them to remember about you that's different from who is exhibiting next to you?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe our last question, maybe also, Andrew, you could give your opinion about that one. Personally, because of the style of photo I do, and because also most of the time I will print on archival quality canvas, which are highly textured, like painters. You know, what I do as a photograph, my style of photography, very often people think it's a painting. So I signed within the photo and not on the margin. But a lot of purists don't like that. So what's your opinion about this?
In my opinion, purely part of my opinion of buying, I think that's a personal preference of how that looks within the print and how highly you rate the name of that photographer. You know, if it was Picasso that had signed it, I wouldn't really care where he'd signed it and whether it was out. I probably would prefer that within the print, you know. So that's a difficult one to answer for me. I think I don't know what people think about signing things. I think, as Nancy said, if you're famous and then your name adds further value to the print, it probably does add further value to the print. So, but my opinion is, I mean, like, it's just a purely aesthetic thing, isn't it? If it's hidden within the print or whether it's much more visible on the whiteboard, or for example, I don't know. I'm waffling. I can't really answer that question. I don't know if anyone's got any.
It's an artistic choice.
Yeah, artistic choice. Yeah, that I don't think there's a definitive answer to, I think.
So Nancy, what is your experience about that?
I think it's an artistic choice and also content dependent. So if it's a portrait, I would say do it on the border.
Makes sense.
If it's landscape, then I think you can put it onto the landscape.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But it's a personal thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, there's a couple of questions in the chat. I'm just going to read those out so everybody can see them. So one person asked, I don't even understand what this is. I was wondering whether Bebe asked, I was wondering whether the archival aspect is valid using diasec. Do you know what diasec means?
No. What's diasec?
I don't know what diasec is. If Bebe's still there, I don't know whether she can explain. There's another question. If you are fairly new,
I'm here.
Hi, Bebe. What is diasec?
It's if the photograph is printed on an aluminium board and but put behind an acrylic layer. Is it still I don't know the word in English, I'm sorry. Is it still living for up to 50 years if you have a photo paper, and up to is it archival for longer than 100 years if it's printed in this process? Is it the same?
I would say not, but I think it's worth checking because I think it's the ink that will have the bigger effect there, because I don't think you'd be using pigment ink in that process. I don't think.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, and then so I think it's Maria asked, if you're fairly new, does it make sense to do limited editions? And is it, yeah, if you are fairly new, does it still make sense to do limited editions and certify your print?
Well, and this is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because you're new at the moment, relatively unknown, but everybody starts that way, and some people will become very well known and very famous. So I would say it certainly doesn't hurt to do it early. You know, why not? I mean, it's not going to cost you a great deal to do that, but the perceived value of that being part of your offering, I think, is worth it.
I also think the scarcity element of the fact that there are only ever going to be 25 of these prints ever made, and I really love this print, no matter whether you're well known or not, means if I don't buy it now, I'm going to miss out. So I think there's also now a scarcity element that makes people more likely to buy. It means you potentially can charge a bit more for your prints if you do limited editions.
Yeah, and signing it, even if you're not well known, builds a bond between you and the person that bought it. You know, it is that extra bit of personal touch, if you like.
Yeah, especially if you, like you said, you've made that connection with them, with your bio and met them and that kind of thing.
And the other thing, of course, is that if people come to the person's house and they see it and there's no signature, they have no idea who did it. But if they come to the house and they see the signature and they go, I really like that, then they might go away and look on your website and think, oh, I'll have one of those.
Bit of free advertising.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Ivan, am I saying your name right, Ivan? You've got another question?
Yes, you're saying it right. Yeah, just before my question, just to add, to make the connection with the buyer. Personally, in addition to the certificate of authenticity and a certificate of archival quality that I produce based on the products I used, I add a short bio. And if there is a story for that picture, I write the story. And if I have had an award for that story, I also make a copy of the award, of the certificate of the award. So when people go home, they can talk about the picture that they bought. They can tell the story to their friends and family, and that creates a momentum. And then people come back to you, you know, their friends or family members, and then you increase your sale because you have a good connection. Very often they will become collectors. They can buy 5, 6, 7, 10 of your large prints to decorate their home. So that's making a connection with the buyer is very important. My question is about if somebody knows a good piece of software database, for example, where you can store the information about your photo, about the editions that are sold, sizes, about the awards that may have received, and about more information. Like there are several pieces of software that are available for, they are not expensive, you know, for paintings, but for photography, none of them really works because they don't have the necessary information. So I have not looked at that for the last 2 years, but I don't know if some participants are using such an application.
This is the one I was referring to that we have online called My Art Registry.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. Does it have to be? No, it's pretty sure it does not have to be with Hahnemühle paper.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It's an asset content management system. It may not have all the fields that you mentioned. It has a lot of them. But that's good feedback to send to us about, you know, because it's only adding more fields, and we can develop it. But it's based in the cloud, and you'd put the certificate of authenticity number on there, whatever system you're using. It doesn't have to be with our paper, but it has the field for you to put the paper.
Okay, because sometimes it's even a challenge to remember the title we gave to that photo. So having a database about it would be very useful. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
And then a quick question, I think, or a question from Brian. What do you think about signing on the back or the front or both of the print?
Personally, I'd sign it on the front.
Yeah, and then, So often people put something on the back, which has got a bit more technical detail or the certificate of authenticity or something, don't they? So
yeah.
And Maria again, is it better? I think you've kind of answered this. Is it better to frame or not to frame?
So if you're looking at, there's a company called White Wall.
Yeah.
If you go on White Wall's website, it's just an interesting place to go to look at lots of different framing options, because I don't think there is an answer necessary for an individual to frame or not to frame. It is a very personal thing. I mentioned that the website I showed you, he only sells them unframed, because that personal choice is up to the individual. But if you're looking at framing, then go on the White Wall website and you can see all sorts of different types of frames that you may choose, maybe for an exhibition. So we're going to an exhibition in the UK in June. Some of the images that we show will be framed, some won't.
Yeah, and I think as well, if you're selling stuff, then selling them unframed is just practically easier to post things if you're going to post things, and less work for you to have to put it in the frame, buy the frame. Do you know what I mean? It's actually, you don't just have to add on the cost of the frame, you have to add on the cost of your time to put the thing in the frame, and then the post.
And then the chance that the frame might get damaged en route.
Yeah.
There's a lot of considerations, and the weight of the postage of sending a framed. If it's a print, you can put it in a tube.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Brian just asked, and I think we've already mentioned White Wall. So there's loads of Brian asked about, is there somewhere where you can show your images however they'd look framed? But I think places like, I know even the Print Space and White Wall, you can upload your image and then you can see it in all the different frames on different walls, and you can actually visualize it. So any of those major printing and frame, White Wall do that, Print Space do that, any of the serious printing provider will enable you to upload your photos, then you can visualize it in all different sizes and colors of mounts, different frames, show it with a sofa in the front on different color wall, all of the in your bathroom, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's all definitely available. Okay, guys, any final questions? Cool. Okay, I think we'll end it there then. Okay, I've really enjoyed it. I think we should do it again. I think it's good to get people together and talk about photography and framing and all that stuff. So I just want to say thank you again to Nancy for doing it, and
Pleasure.
I hope everyone enjoyed it. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.